Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dr. Mercy Mumba. I'm excited to welcome you to 2025 officially. This is our very first fireside chat for 2025, and I'm excited to host Dr. Fredah Banda, who I have known for a very long time. We went to the same high school, and though we were not friends in high school, I was her senior in boarding school life, so know a little bit about her and her journey, and I'm just excited to be able to chat with her about all things AI, all things technology, and all things Fredah Banda. And today our topic is from black and white screens to AI, the journey of an African girl in love with technology. And I'll look, Fredah has a stellar CV, but we tried to summarize it in just in just a short bio. So here we go. Dr. Fredah Banda is a software engineer with over a decade of professional experience around the world. She is the first lady to graduate with distinction in computer science in the history of the University of Zambia. She is a Rhodes Scholar and the first lady to obtain a PhD in computer science from Oxford University. Okay, we're not talking about like any university. We're talking about the Oxford University. So right there, just plugging them. Excited to talk about that. Her expertise lies in software project management, data science, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Throughout her career, she has worked as software project manager, overseeing several projects involving custom software development, design, development, testing, and deployment of change management. Her attention to detail allows her to accurately understand the business needs and translate them into robust and functional systems that meet world-class standards and incorporate cutting-edge technology. She strongly believes in using technology to solve problems and improve livelihoods, whether it's by increasing efficiency, enhancing access to services, promoting transparency, accountability, and reducing workload. She is also, look, I was very impressed by this. She's also deeply passionate about innovation, artificial intelligence, data security, and educating the next generation of STEM users, technology users, and innovators. And because of that, she extends her STEM awareness by actually teaching girls and boys how to code in Code Academy, where she has learners as young as 6 years old. She's not just about improving herself, she's also about improving the lives of others. Now, she has been lecturing computer science in the Oxford and Cambridge summer schools since 2016, and recently had the opportunity to give a talk on unloading the potential of artificial intelligence to develop Africa, which is something I want to delve into as well. She's currently the director of digital architecture and AI at MindEd, as well as the program manager at Good Nature Agro. In addition to her professional work, she is actively volunteering for several professional organizations such as Impact Missionaries, Mother of Millions Foundations, the Savannah Project, and outreach programs for the Rhodes Scholarship in Zambia. She is a force of positivity, innovation, and ingenuity. Fredah, welcome to the Fireside Chat.
Thank you so much, Mercy. I'm so excited to be here. So honored that you would have me as a guest on your fireside chat. I'm also interested in getting to know a little bit more about your journey. So I'm hoping we can
Absolutely.
have a conversation.
Awesome. So, Fredah, like I said, you and I back to high school. And, I grew up, well, I like to think I grew up in a time when career trajectories were very prescribed for people who were intelligent or smart or however you want to prescribe that. Tell me what inspired you to go into software engineering, especially as a woman, because I think at the time when you went into it, it was a very male dominated career field.
So actually, I wanted to be a mechanical engineer.
Look at that.
When I was much younger, I used to spend a lot of time with my father, and we would fix things together. So he was an electronics engineer, so we'd do stuff together, create things, fix things, and I
Mhm.
just liked the whole idea of creating stuff. And so I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. And after high school, I met somebody who did study that and said, "Oh, it's terrible in Zambia. You don't really get much experience. You do
Mhm.
more maintenance work. You don't really create anything. And if something needs to be created, they bring in people from outside the country." So at the time when I heard this, I had already been accepted into mechanical engineering at the Copperbelt University
Oh.
and through NS at UNZA for the natural sciences. So I thought, oh,
Mhm.
well, so I'm not going to do that, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And I went to the University of Zambia. Computers for me have always been fun. I
Mhm.
read somewhere if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Absolutely.
And
And
from the
that's why
top,
sometimes people think I'm a workaholic because I actually do love what I do and it doesn't feel like work. So they're like, Mercy, you're still working. Like, am I? Okay, stop.
so I was in my natural sciences first year, and you get to decide, you want to do medicine, do you want to do some form of engineering, agricultural science, computer science, like what do you want to do? And from the time I was little, I was exposed to computers. So we had a computer lab at home, and I basically in the 90s got to see the journey of technology starting from black and white screens. For us, it was just about games. You want to play Tetris, you want to play Pac-Man, CD-Man, Prince of Persia, that kind of a thing.
Mhm.
But my mom had a computer school, and so she would teach people how to use computers. So always in the lab, would wake up early in the morning, just go into the computer lab, just go and
Mhm.
play. And so I thought, well, I love computers. I've always loved computers. I think let me give it a shot. And you
Yeah.
are actually right. I was actually the only girl in a class full of guys my year. There were
Wow.
some, yeah, so there were some other ladies who had gone before, but maybe you'd have maybe two or three in the class, maybe
Mhm.
one in the class of my year. I was the only one. And I didn't have a laptop. So it was a very weird thing being a
Yeah.
computer science student without a computer.
That is interesting.
hmm So I'd always tell my mom I need a laptop, and she says I don't have money to buy you one. I can afford it, and so I bought this really big book that's like Java how to program,
Mhm.
and I'll read through it and learn. Like I focus on a chapter, I learn something, I close the book, I open my actual book and start writing the code on paper. So I used to code on paper and
Wow.
then compare my code with the one in the book, take note of like where I'm making mistakes. And I was the only person in class who didn't have a laptop. But I was coming up top of the class, and people would get upset and be like, "How is she even passing? She doesn't even have a
She has a
laptop."
leakage.
I got my first laptop in third year.
Oh,
In
wow.
university, yes. But I remember, I think one of my biggest motivations has been my mom.
Mhm.
Um, because she would say, when I tell her, oh, I'm top of the class, I can relax, I don't have to work really hard this term. She says, you
Mhm.
compete against yourself. You have to be better than you were yesterday. Don't compete against other people because then
Mm.
you're going to relax. And yeah, long story short, it was an amazing journey. I enjoyed it. I'm still enjoying it now.
Yeah.
Um, and that's how I ended up graduating the first girl with a distinction in computer science in the history of UNZA, which was
In
amazing.
the history, like let's put a flag on that. In the history, not just like in this decade or whatever, in the history. That's something to be proud of.
Thank you.
Well, so now you finished computer engineering at UNZA. You're trying to figure out what next. How do you make those decisions on going back to school, getting back in the workforce, and how do you navigate all of that? What were some things that inspired you to go one way or the other?
So I always wanted to study. I remember when we were younger, my father had an opportunity to. He had some money
Mm-hmm.
um, that had come through for something, and he
Yeah.
wanted to buy a couple of houses and one house for my mom too. And he
Mm-hmm.
asked her, "You want me to get you a house?" She says, "No, I want to go to school."
Mm.
And she said, "The reason why is if anything happens to you, this house is just going to shelter us, but it's not going to buy food, it's not going to pay school fees, it's not going to take care of us. What I need is an education." So she's always been passionate about education.
Wow.
She went to university when I was in grade 4.
Interesting.
Yes. So she had always wanted to learn, and she'd always say, "You need to study, you need to get an education. It's the one thing that will help you." And one funny thing is when I was at DK, because I was just playing around, she said, "You know what? If you don't pass your exams and you don't get sponsored to university, I'm going to send you back to the same school to repeat." I'm like, "Never."
Look, you are your own scholarship. You're paying for your education, okay?
Yeah, so it was a harsh reality because my father died when I was in grade 11 in the first term, and everything
Oh, I didn't
changed.
even know that. I'm sorry to
Yeah,
hear that.
it's okay, but life became much harder. So she said, "You know
Mhm.
what? There's 5 of you. I can't manage to send you to private schools. If you're going to go to the University of Zambia, Copperbelt University, you have to be sponsored, so you have to get good grades."
Yeah.
So she's basically been lighting the fire under me for a long time.
Hmm.
After university, I worked for a Russian company in Zambia as a developer, software developer,
Yeah.
and there was an opportunity. So me being the first lady to graduate with a distinction in computer science, it opened a lot of opportunities for me. I went to
Hmm.
Germany. I worked at the headquarters of Mercedes Benz. Then
Hmm.
I came back.
I remember that. We're going to have to come and revisit that because I think that was one of the, well, in my opinion, one of the highlights of your career trajectory that really exposed you to the world in a different light.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it was an interesting program because they say, whenever people graduate from university, they apply for jobs, and all the
Mm,
jobs say we want someone with 5, 10, 15, 20 years experience, but you
right.
just graduated. So what this program did was it would get like well-performing graduates from like some African countries and
Mm,
take you to these high-end companies so that you can get some experience. So even though you
mm,
don't have 10 years experience, you can be like, "Yeah, I worked at Mercedes Benz." It
right.
actually works to your advantage. And then when I came back, one of
Hmm.
my friends that I went with to Germany says, "Why don't you apply for the Rhodes Scholarship?"
Hmm.
And I'm like, I applied for scholarships before to go to China, Algeria, all of these countries, Russia, and would always get turned down because there was high corruption in the bursaries
Hmm.
committee at the time. And
Yeah.
so given up and said, "I'll just study in Zambia, it's fine." And
Hmm.
so that trauma of having been rejected before for scholarships, when I was told to apply for the roads, I'm like, "Yeah, man, and besides, they only pick two people every year. Like, what are the odds are gonna pick me?
What
And I
are
don't
the
have."
odds it's going to be me to be one of those two people, right?
Yeah, so I didn't apply. And 2 days before the deadline,
Hmm.
he calls me and he says, "Frida, have you applied for the Rhodes Scholarship? Tell me now if you're not going to apply, so I apply on your behalf because I."
Okay. Everybody needs friends like Frida's friends. Let's just put that out there. Friends who are going to believe in you even when you don't and are going to push you to really, you know, reach for the skies, really, and reach for the stars. So I love that.
Yeah, so I was like, he's like, "If you don't apply, I'm going to apply for you." I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay, okay, I'll apply." And so that's how I applied, literally 2 days before. And I got shortlisted and they picked me and I was shocked. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to Oxford." And that's how I went to Oxford. It
Mhm.
was amazing. There's people from all over the world, amazing people. There's so much to see, so much to do, but it was really great exposure. And 1 year in, I had the transfer exam. So I went on a master's. So sometimes you cry over things. So I wanted to do a taught master's in
Yeah.
computer science, which is 1 year.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we've accepted you into the master's by research, which
Yeah.
is 2 years, because we
Mm.
found someone who wants to supervise you. I'm like, I don't want the master's by research. I want the master's. I want the master's. That's what I want.
I
And
want
they're
to
like,
be done, one and done.
yes. But what I didn't know is that actually that worked to my advantage. So if you're doing a research master's, after a year, you get to do a transfer exam where they get to confirm you into the second year of the master's. But
Mm.
during my transfer exam, they said, your topic is so interesting. What you're working on is amazing. And this is actually going to be worth a PhD. So we're going to transfer you into the second year of the PhD. So I basically like skipped the master's. And so I have an undergrad and I have a PhD, but I don't have a master's degree.
See, you and I are in the same boat. Like when I was finishing up my bachelor's degree, and I tell this story, and people laugh at me. I was called to the dean's office, the dean at the time, and she was like, I keep hearing all of these great things about you, your academic prowess, your research skills, and all of these things. And she was like, have you ever thought about a PhD? And I'm like, I'm just trying to finish my bachelor's degree. And she's like, no, talk to the person who is the director of the PhD program. And I've asked her to talk to you about this because I think that you would be a really good PhD student because of your love for research, because of your love for inquiry and all of these things. And I think it's going to be a good career trajectory for you. And I was like, really? So I went and talked to my director of the PhD program at the time. And she was like, yeah, there's this thing, where you go straight from a bachelor's to a PhD and you skip the master's completely. And that's what I ended up doing also. So that is so funny that you did that as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And for your PhD, what did you decide to specialize in?
I did a PhD in nursing, and my area of focus is clinical research. So that was what I ended up doing. And I've never looked back. And, sometimes I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't go the career path that I planned for myself because I'm really loving the things that I get to do now. And it's
Mhm.
so just enlightening to me that sometimes we don't even know what we don't know, and God places people in our lives to like show us the way and point us in the right direction. And sometimes those detours are so much better than what we could have planned for ourselves.
I totally agree. I totally agree. That's amazing. I'm happy. I'm enjoying the conversation.
So you decide to do this PhD, and now you're in second year PhD.
Mm-hmm. I'm in second year, and then one of my friends says, "Have you ever considered taking a student job?" And I said, "Well, they don't pay well.
Mm,
They pay like £10 an hour. And it's a lot of time." And she said, "Have you considered teaching?" I'm like, "Teaching?" She's like, "Yeah." Have you tried the summer schools? I'm like, "Where do you even find this?" So she pointed me to the job board, and
mm.
I went and applied to all the summer schools I could find. I'm like, "Hi, I'm Fredah.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm a computer science student here in Oxford. I'd love to teach at your summer school."
Mm-hmm.
And nearly all of them got back to me. And now we have students coming to us saying, "Why don't you offer computer science?"
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have it. And so we want you not only to teach computer science to the kids, but we want you to also prepare the learning materials, and we're going to pay you for that. And we want
Mm.
you to teach them in Python. I had never learned Python. I was just like, okay.
Wow.
And I had to go back and teach myself basically in a week and a half, and basically learn Python. And that was my
Mm.
first teaching. And I would teach sometimes in Oxford summer schools, sometimes in Cambridge summer schools. But I just love the whole concept of a summer school where children come and they get
Mm-hmm.
exposed to an area that they have interest in. If they want to be lawyers, they spend time with
Mm-hmm.
a real lawyer who teaches them, and they have practical exercises. If it's
Right.
medicine, they do some dissection, they learn some anatomy, like, interesting things. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, the child gets to decide, is it for me? Is it not for me? But it's
Mhm.
better to have that exposure early than
Right.
later. Yes. But I just love the teaching methods,
Mm.
and I think this is amazing. And our kids in Zambia, African kids, are equally as smart. They can learn this stuff as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're way back in terms of technology, like we could catch up. And
Mhm.
so when I moved back to Zambia, I started Code Academy, where
Mhm.
I teach kids how to code. And in the Oxford and Cambridge summer schools, the youngest student I had was 9. But
Yeah.
then here, I'll get parents call and say, listen, my daughter is 6. My son is 5.5. I want him to come to your
Wow.
class. I'm like, okay, it's amazing. I mean, bring them over. And
Yeah.
so we move at the pace of the student with the least experience, so we
Mhm.
don't leave anyone behind. But it's
Yeah.
been amazing. It's been amazing. I actually take leave from work to teach kids, and I come back so happy. And they're like, "You look like you went on
Oh
holiday."
my goodness.
I was teaching kids during the holidays. So yeah, it's something I love to do. I didn't know it was in me to be a
Mhm.
teacher, but
Yeah. That's just amazing that you're giving back in such amazing ways. And given the technology gaps that we have in most of our African countries, being able to bring that to the forefront and build the next generation to be as competitive on the world stage as what we're seeing in other areas, I think that that's very commendable. Now, talking about you coming back home, I remember, I don't even know what year that was, a couple of years ago, you posted on social media something about the government should hire me. I'm ready to come back. Tell me about that, because I just thought, man, she's so bold. Like that's a bold move. So let's talk about that.
I love, like, people always ask me, why do you keep coming back to Zambia? And I say it's my favorite place in the world.
Yeah,
I love the weather. I love the people. I love the food. So I always come back.
yeah,
Yeah. And so I always wanted to come back, but I just wanted to come back and be able to contribute to our development, especially to do with technology. And
yeah,
so I came back. I got involved with the STEM Foundation. They promote science, technology, engineering, and math. Now it's STEAM now with art as well.
yeah.
Um, I have worked with our Minister of Technology and Science. I worked as his technical advisor for a bit. And so now we just basically have conversations if he needs advice on certain things.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay,
but
so let's like not gloss over that. Like technical advisor to the Ministry of Technology is not like anybody could just walk in the room and say, okay, you're going to be my technical advisor. So that in itself is such an amazing experience and also a testament to your level of expertise and innovation that you bring to the table, that you're able to serve as a technical advisor in such a huge capacity. So I just wanted to pause and acknowledge that.
thank you. But it's so random, you know. I was taking, one of the biggest challenges I had when I came back to Zambia,
Hmm.
I couldn't get a job.
What?
Imagine that. I would apply for jobs and they'd be like, "Oh, you're overqualified."
Okay, so this whole thing about being overqualified, because I know a couple of friends who have experienced the same thing. So, what is the solution to being overqualified?
It was so tricky for me because some people are like, well, why don't you hide your PhD? I'm like, if I hide
Mhm.
my PhD, then I have a bachelor's.
Exactly.
I don't
Yeah.
have a bachelor's, and so it's going to be tricky. And I realized for some it's actually an excuse. So I had a coffee with one of the former Rhodes scholars, one of the alumni, and he's
Hmm.
like, "Listen, send me your CV." So I sent it, and he's like, "This is brilliant. I know a certain institution I won't name. These
Yeah.
guys would be amazing if they had you. Let me just send your CV there." Well, I'm like, I've applied there twice and they've never gotten back to me. He's like, no, 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 I know the director. Let me send to him.
Hmm.
So he sends it to him, and the man responds and says, yeah, I've already seen this CV, but we can't hire her because she doesn't have a master's. Are,
What? Okay, sir, I have a PhD.
Our minimum requirement is a master's, and she doesn't have a master's. So because of that, we can hire her. So it was really, really tough.
That
But
is interesting.
yeah, but I did some consulting instead. So
Mhm.
I'll work with companies, I'll do some consulting work with them. And when I came to Good Nature Agro for my interview, I'd gone
Yeah,
into a point where like, you know what, I'm just going to apply for like any job in tech because I want to work, right?
yeah.
And so I remember one of my brothers, Sean, I don't know if you remember him from DK, he sent in the family group a job posting for a backend developer.
Mm-hmm.
And my younger brother, who's also a computer scientist, he's a full stack developer, but more on the front end. He's like, yeah,
Interesting.
that's not really my thing. I'm more of a front end guy. And I'm
Yeah,
like, well, okay, I've done back end before, back in the day. I've done
yeah,
front end, I'm full stack, I've done project management, all of those. Like back end is like when you're starting, back end, front end is when you split, and then you keep progressing. But I'm like, it's work, you know?
right.
So I applied for the job. And when I came for the interviews, they
Mm-hmm.
say, you know what? You're overqualified for this job. They gave me the
Yeah.
same statement. I'm like, I know. And they say, don't you feel like it's kind of like a step down? And I
Mm,
said, I've looked at the job description and it's something that I've done before. It's something that I can do and I'm willing to do.
yeah.
So that's why I applied. Then they say, well, you're in luck because we just got Series B funding. And so we're actually going to grow a tech team. And
Mm,
so I had to do more interviews with them so that they could figure out where they'll place me in the organization. And
yeah.
yeah, and then that's how come I became a product manager.
Yeah.
And the same role I applied for, I ended up managing the backend developer, managing some front end developers.
Look at
Now,
that.
recently- I just recently got promoted to software development manager, so I'm managing the tech team, which is amazing. But like I tell people this because sometimes we block ourselves from opportunities because you
Mm,
think I'm too good for this, you
yeah.
know, this is not good enough for me. But you don't know what's on the other side. You don't know what growth you can make. You don't know what opportunities lie ahead.
Mm,
And if I had also just said, oh, it's a backend developer job, this
yeah.
is too low for me, then
Mm.
who knows? Maybe I still wouldn't be working right now. So,
That is such great advice that sometimes you just got to start somewhere and you don't know where those roles are going to lead. Maybe they're going to lead into something even bigger. I remember
mhm,
when I was moving to Alabama to start my assistant professor position, like we didn't have family in Alabama, my husband and I. And everyone was like, oh my God, you're going so far away. You don't know a soul. What's going to happen there? And there was just a lot of unknown, but I took that leap of faith and I was like, okay, we're going to go figure this out. And I will tell you that I've experienced so much growth at this institution that I probably would have if I had remained in Texas or any other place. And I look back and I'm like, the things that I've managed to accomplish in the last 7 to 8 years that I've been here are so
mhm,
much bigger than what I would have dreamed of myself. But it's because I kept an open mind. I was willing to get out of my comfort zone, go somewhere that I was not familiar with, didn't know anybody, and just kept my mind open to opportunities as they arose. So I completely agree with you that sometimes people have a certain vision of what they want in their life and they're not willing to detour or get out of their comfort zone to be uncomfortable for a short period. But those things, when they happen and doors open, you're like, in hindsight is always 2020, but you're like, I am so glad that I did that, because some of these opportunities may not have even come my way. So I completely agree with you on that.
mhm, mhm. And how was it moving to a new state? Did it take you time to like fit in? How are the people there?
Yeah, it really did take me some time because, like, I was coming from a very metropolitan area into a not very metropolitan area. That was one. Number two, I was starting a completely new job, which was, very tenure track. You've been in academia. Tenure track is crazy. You're expected to do research, you're expected to publish, you're expected to do all of these things, and there's just a lot of pressure. So getting to know people for the first time, creating friends and learning where things are, I literally say that, it pushed me so much out of my comfort zone. And work was one of the things that, because I love the things that I do, work was one of the things that actually gave me a lot of peace. Because like when everything else felt like it was turmoil, I know that work was something that was working out, and I really loved that about it. And now I enjoy the nature. Like there's a lot of trees and all of that stuff, things that I didn't necessarily think I would enjoy at first. And then when I look at the friendships that I've created, the roles that I've been able to serve in, the lives of the students that I've been able to impact, I look at that and I go like, oh my God, if I didn't get out of my comfort zone, I would have missed out on all of these opportunities. So it's hard starting out afresh, in a new area where you don't know anybody or anything like that. But you have to trust the process, and you have to trust God as well, because I think that that's where my peace comes from personally. And knowing that no matter what I'm doing, God's got it. Like sometimes things feel like they're falling through the cracks, but God knows exactly where I'm going. So that's definitely something that was very important to me. And I'm so grateful that you brought that up, because I feel like with the unemployment situation, which we cannot, overemphasize the unemployment situation among the youth, I think you have to creative and willing to get out of your comfort zone and start somewhere. And you never know what doors open after that. So thank you for bringing that up.
No, thank you.
So
And
yeah,
you know what I did when I couldn't work?
yeah.
I started making things because I've always loved to make things.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, you said you taught yourself how to paint using YouTube videos. And then you're showing all these paintings. I'm like, Frida, you gotta be kidding me. You did just like teach yourself to do that. I'm like, okay, first of all, you're smart and intelligent, and now you're artsy and crafty. Like, what's going on?
Well, for the painting and the art, interesting story. So when I was younger, we lived 10 years in Zimbabwe, and then we lived 2 years
Really?
in South Africa. Yes. And so during the time in South Africa, I used to attend art class,
Hmm.
and I made my first painting, and my family used to laugh at me. They'll be like, "This painting is hideous. This is an ugly painting. What is this? Is it a leaf or a fruit? We can't
Yeah,
tell."
that would be me. Like, you can't tell what I'm drawing or painting. It's like I'm terrible.
Yeah, so it was a terrible painting. What was my first one? And actually, there was a time when they're clearing out the house, and they're
Mhm.
like, throw it in the trash, and they even burnt it. So I never painted. I was just like, I'm a bad painter,
Yeah.
uh, and I left it at that. And then in 2020, I was in Oxford finishing up with my PhD, and I had literally traveled there because I used to, like, the last 3 years of it, I was working remotely. So I lived in Turkey, and
Mm.
I'd travel to Oxford twice a month. I'd fly in, see my supervisor, and go back.
Yeah.
And then the last year I was in Zambia. So
Mm.
Zambia is just so fun. There's always, like, people are always doing stuff. There's always an
Yeah.
event. And I'm like, I need the school environment, so I need to go back to Oxford. And
Mm.
so I said, I'm going to spend my last 6 months in Oxford. And literally 3 weeks after I arrived,
Yeah.
the whole country shut down because of COVID.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they closed everything, all the departments, all the stores that were not selling food. People couldn't walk around. You walk around too much, they fine you. It was like
Yeah.
proper, lockdown. And so my university, they were trying to cheer us up because all the English students had all just gone home and they were spending time with
Mm.
their families. And then
Yeah.
we couldn't go anywhere and we couldn't go home because all the flights were grounded. So
Right.
I remember this one day they were giving out like stuff. So they gave a little plant for you to
Mm-hmm.
keep in the room. They gave us bubbles to blow. And I also got a painting set.
Mm.
Like, oh, painting set. Let's see. So I went online. I'm like, I don't even know what to paint. I'm just gonna copy what somebody else has done. And I literally searched like acrylic painting lessons for
Mm-hmm.
beginners because I was like, I don't know anything. I last did something in eighth grade and it was hideous, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I would spend time because of the lockdown. We were forced to be indoors for long periods of time. I had the time to actually pick up on the new skill and practice, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how I basically got to that. But I
Yeah.
just like to try things, and one of my favorite books is Atomic Habits,
I
and
love that book. I love that book.
they say whatever you want to do, if you want to build a new habit, you just have to do it for 21 days, and then after that, it becomes like a part of you.
Yeah.
And I, when I was younger, I planted onions and they died. And,
Oh,
and I was
are you
like,
the plant killer? I, people walk into our house and they see a lot of plants, but 90% of them
uh-huh.
are not real plants. Because look, I kill plants. I need the ones that are like low maintenance. I can do peace lilies and things like that, but that's about it.
Yeah, but like I believed. I was like, I can't. I'm not a good farmer.
Yeah.
I've tried it before. I failed. I mean, who plants onions and they die? Those things basically like take care of themselves. But I've always wanted to live in a forest.
Yeah.
And I just said I need to learn how to garden. So I had an uncle who, like, you could give him any seeds and he's going to give you back seedlings. He's
Wow.
that. And so I approached him and say, "Listen, Uncle James, I need you to teach me how to
Mhm.
garden." And
Yeah.
so whenever I see a tree I like, I'll get some seeds. I'll pull the car over, get some seeds, get some seeds. I got jacarandas, flamboyants, palm
Mhm.
trees. If I like a lemon, I'll keep the seeds. I eat a pawpaw, I'll keep the seeds. I keep mangoes,
Yeah.
and then I'll just keep taking the seeds to him. And so when he started, like when the seedlings started coming out, he says, you need to start looking after your plants. I'm like, I don't have time. He's like, you gotta make time. And I used to avoid it, and he was
Mhm.
taking care of them. And then sometime last year, he had to move to Chongwe.
Mm.
So he's like, "Listen, Frida, I'm leaving. I'm going to Chongwe. Because my goal was to plant one tree for each day of 20
Interesting.
of 2023, and so my goal was 365 trees.
Wow.
And at the time, we had over 200. And
Mm.
so it's like, you now know how to multiply the seeds and
Mm.
everything, but I'm leaving and I can't take all your babies with me. You have to take care of them. So he
Yeah.
left and I was still in denial. And a week later, I went to check on them and they were drying up, like seriously drying.
Oh
And
my.
and I said, if he comes back and he hears or sees what's happened, he'd be heartbroken. So I went and watered them through the night and picked them, migrated them. I had to move like about 4 or 5 Hilux loads of plants home.
Wow.
And I'm sure that your 21 days starts now. You have to water them every day. You have to make sure they're okay. You have to
Mhm.
weed them. And now it's become a part of me. So now I have over 600 plants. I
How
wake up
do
every
you have time to take care of them?
I wake up every morning at 5. So from 5 to 6, I'm just watering my plants. Then I
Wow.
get ready for work and I come to work because I know I won't have time after work. And so I have
Mm.
to make time for them. And then Sunday is my gardening day where I now do like weeding, transplanting, that kind of stuff. But now
Yeah.
it's become like second nature. I can plant seeds. And so right now I have like Christmas seedlings because I planted just before Christmas. I'm like, I want to gift myself with more plants. And
Nice.
so yeah, so I've always wanted to live in a forest, but now that is still going to be a reality
Mm-hmm.
because where I'm building, I can take all these plants with me. And people ask me all the time, where did you learn to garden? You've always had green hands. I'm like, believe it or not, they
Yeah.
started out pretty black.
Ah,
I planted onions. But whatever it is that you want to do, if you pick something that you want to learn and
right.
you pick this, you get better at it.
That's amazing. So you're doing all of this, and I think that maybe I might be reading into this, but a lot of people that I know that do gardening say that it's very therapeutic for them, and it helps with their mental space and clarity and all of that. Is that one of the ways that you try to take care of yourself as well? Because that's what I've heard from a lot of people who garden, that it's really relaxing and just clears you.
Mhm. So for me, I was the time when I started gardening, I wanted to cut down on hanging out with bad company,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was like, instead of because you get bored and you're not doing anything, you're like, hey, what are you
Right.
guys doing? You come over, and I'm just like, no. So
Mm-hmm.
I decided to just start gardening. Someone said the devil has eyes and
Mm-hmm.
has ears, but he can't read mind. And
Mm-hmm.
my mom used to tell me all the time, Frida, you talk too much. You talk too much. I would get a, I would like get a job offer and be telling everyone, I got an offer. I'm gonna be
Mm-hmm.
working here. They're gonna be paying me this much. I'm starting on this date. And
Yeah.
literally days before, I'd get an
Mm-hmm.
email saying, oh, we've withdrawn the offer of employment, like
Oh,
without any reason. And this happened like 3 times in a row. And my mom asked me, like, who are you talking to? Who
yeah.
did you tell about a job? Because not everybody
Mm-hmm.
who's your wants the best for you. So sometimes you're excited and you're telling people these things about things that are
Yeah.
happening in your life, but
Mm-hmm.
for them it's just they see it as an opportunity to break something. So you
Mm.
need to learn to be more quiet. So that's why I
Yeah.
like plants. I can still talk a lot, but they're not gonna
They don't have any ill intent toward you.
nothing, they're not gonna say anything, they're not gonna, plot behind my back. And
Right.
a year into the gardening, I watched there's this series on Netflix called The Secrets of the Blue Zones. You know what a
I
blue zone
haven't
is?
seen it. Let me write that down.
So a blue zone is an area where people tend to live over 100 years. A lot of people.
Mm.
And so each episode they visit a different city or a different
Mm-hmm.
area, region. And so the first one was, I think it's in China. If not China, then it's in Japan. But a
Mm-hmm.
certain city, and they were like, what we find common about these people is that they garden.
Mm.
So gardening is good for your mental health. You get to breathe in fresh air, but also you get to exercise because you have to bend, you have to pick up things, you have to
Yeah.
weed, you have to water. And so, like for my watering that I do from 5 a.m. to 6, I literally draw the water and have to like water each one of them. So I'm getting this exercise.
Yeah.
Um, yes. So for me, it's like good, and it's a full body workout because you have to stretch in different
Mm.
areas to get to different plants and
Right.
that. And I just want to produce my own food eventually. Right now, I'm planting trees because I love trees.
Yeah.
But at some point, I want to grow my own food. And so it's good
Mm-hmm.
practice. Trees are lower maintenance. Sometimes like
Yeah.
plant maize. I'm like, I don't think I have the patience to grow maize right now because it would take a lot of.
It's a lot of patience. Look, by the time you plant, you weed, you put the first. I've even forgotten. I don't know. There's D, and then there's urea. There's what? I'm like, I can't keep up. It needs a
It's a
lot of
process.
patience.
Yes, yes. So like my garden is like a tiny, tiny garden in the backyard, and I
Mhm.
have the plants there, and I like it. I like to spend time there when I'm happy, when I'm sad. If I just want to listen to music, I'll just go sit in the garden. So it's a nice habit, and I feel like it's actually working to my benefit more than I expected.
Well,
But
good.
I like it.
So you're consulting, you're planting trees, you're gardening, you're teaching, you're investing in young people. What makes you think of the entrepreneur route from there?
I I've always believed that if we put our heads together,
Mm-hmm.
we can do amazing things. Most people want to win alone. They want to
Mm-hmm.
do things on their own. And so when I finished my studies at Oxford, I
Mm-hmm.
just said, what's the next step? So I just sent, I created a WhatsApp group. I
Mm-hmm.
added over 100 people that
Yeah.
I know that are like really good at what they do. Like some of them are educated, some of them have never been to university, but they're really good in
Mm-hmm.
business and like different things. And
Yeah.
then I sent a random audio saying, hey guys, like let's start a company, let's do things together, let's win together. I believe
Mm-hmm.
we put our efforts together, we'll win. So that's how come we started Blex Global, which
Mm-hmm.
is um, it's a Pan-African company. We have members from Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Kenya, Malawi.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and we have 28 directors. So out of those people I sent out, 28 of us basically decided to come together. And then we'd
Yeah.
have brainstorming sessions and come up with ideas. And so one of them that we have is we've come up with, because we have water scarcity, it's a big thing
Right.
here. And I read an article about how they're making rain in Dubai, water from air. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, in the desert.
Yeah.
What? So I'm generally a curious person, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
eternally curious. And so I just started checking to see like how does this work? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and then basically harvesting the water content in the air. And I started checking. So every day I wake up and check how much water do we have in the air now? How much water do we have in the air now? And I even added other cities on my weather app. I added Dubai, I
Mm-hmm.
added like just different cities. London
Mm-hmm.
is flooded, in short. Like they always have water because there's so much. So you find like
Yeah.
in Zambia, for example, it usually ranges between like 45 to 95%, depending on the season and the time of
Mm-hmm.
day. But
Yeah.
when it's like peak season in the UK, it's just between 90 and 100. Like that's how much water content they have in the air. And then I'm like, let me check Dubai. To my surprise, they had more water in the air than we had in Osaka.
Interesting. And they're in a desert?
Yes, it's because they're on the coastline, and so a lot of water evaporates from the ocean and it gets into the
Interesting.
air. So a lot of times when you ask, like, where'd you get your water from? Like for Lusaka, for example,
Mm-hmm.
45% comes from the Kafue River. We literally pump water from Kafue to Lusaka. And then
Wow.
55% comes from boreholes. But everyone is sinking boreholes. People's boreholes are drying up. Those sources are depleting. And
Mm-hmm.
everyone is down, but we have so much water in the air. So that's how come we started Blex Water. And Blex is short for Black Excellence. So we want to
Interesting.
change to change the narrative. So when you think black, you should think positive. If it's black energy, it should be
Yeah.
positive. If it's black water, it should be something positive. So
I love
basically,
that.
yeah.
So tell me, because you just don't get water from the air and then you put it in a bottle. You have to have some experts on your team who have some type of expertise and like how I see you at some of these conferences where you're marketing this product and I see you on TV and on radio talking about this. What message, first of all, the team is the first thing I want you to touch on. And then the
Mhm.
next thing is what's the message you're hoping resonates with people?
Nobody should die of thirst, really.
Mm-hmm.
The solutions are always in front of us, and you need to know what you don't know and
Mm-hmm.
accept that you don't know.
Right.
So when we started, I approached one of my friends, Dr. Kefes Shemenda, and I told him, listen, I've been doing some research and I think this would be great. Let's work together and
Mm-hmm.
make this. water from air machine.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you need to go to the University of Zambia. You need to meet Mr. Dilemma. He's the one who taught me refrigeration. You need to do some lessons with him. So I literally went to the University of Zambia. I went back to the labs in the back because that's where his office used to be. And I
Yeah.
said, Kefas recommended you, and this is what I want to do. And I need you to, I need your help because I
Mm-hmm.
don't really know this stuff. And he
Yeah.
says, come with me. And then he took me to the lab and basically showed me the refrigeration cycle. This is how it works. This is a
Mm-hmm.
compressor. This is how it works. This is the evaporator. This is how it works. And then when we're going through it, he says, what's funny? I've been
Yeah.
teaching this for over 15 years, and I always tell people water is the waste product of the refrigeration cycle. Never did I imagine.
It's a West product. Like, think about it from that way. It's like it's not something we think about from
Yeah,
that perspective.
yeah. So he's like, it's interesting because you're making it a goal. And
Yeah.
so basically, right now on our second prototype, our first prototype was so small. It
Mm-hmm.
was just to show like you can do this. You can get water from air. We use parts from old computers, old
Yeah.
TV, containers, rubber bands, we're just putting parts together to see how we could prove this. But now we're
Mm-hmm.
on a second prototype and it produces between 3 to 10 liters of water per hour.
Wow.
And we've got so much demand. People are like, we want this, we want to put this in our restaurants. And so now we're
Yeah.
looking to scale to be able to have a machine that can produce much more. The only challenge we had was energy because it's such an energy intense process. And
Okay.
so for our next model, we want to use solar. So we want to use free energy from the sun and get
Mm,
water from the air, which is also free. And this water is safer to drink because it was literally heated up to get into the atmosphere. So it's much, much safer than water that has come from like drainages and sunk into the borehole
right.
somewhere. So it's
Mm-hmm.
much cleaner, but we still filter it to get rid of any impurities that would be in the air. But it's been
Mm,
a learning process. It's been a learning process, and it will continue to be a learning process. But there's just that willingness to learn and
yeah.
to know what you don't know. And if you do that, then you will learn. If you think you know everything, somebody said the day you stop learning is the day you become ignorant.
Absolutely.
So I
You know,
just
and Frida, you also touched on something that I think is very important. You said something about you got to know what you don't know and just accept that you don't know those things. In the world that we're living in today, everybody wants to be an expert on everything. And you really cannot. You can dabble into a lot of different things, but you have to understand your limitations and then bring in people with different expertise that will help fortify your team, your corporation, your business, whatever it is that you're doing. But I think a lot of people are failing to move to the next level of success or progress because they want to hold on to everything.
Mhm. They want to hold on to everything and they want to win alone. So,
Exactly.
yes. So, if you're willing to collaborate and to work with people, there's nobody who has nothing to offer.
Yeah.
So, you can put your bits together, and at the end, it actually makes sense.
So you don't go through life and all of these great experiences that you've had without really learning any lessons. So I typically like for us when we're concluding, you won't believe it, but we've been talking for almost an hour. We're almost at the top of the hour, and I always love to ask people, my guests, to share some pearls of wisdom with our audiences so that we're able to help others based on our life trajectories, the lessons that we've learned. So, what are some of the advice that you have for our viewers that you think is important for them and has contributed to the success that you've experienced?
I think the first thing is be positive.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a solution. You
Yeah.
just find it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've been through a lot the past couple of years, and I've realized that it's very important to take care of your mental health. You have to make sure
Mm-hmm.
you're okay mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And for my mental health, if I were to boil it down to one sentence, it would be spend time around good people.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Spend time.
It's so important. I mean, we laugh about it, but energy, whatever you want to call it, it's so important when you're dealing with negative people all the time. That you also become negative when you're dealing with people who have a scarcity mindset all the time. You adopt that. There's just something that it rubs you off. So I completely agree with you that we have to choose our company wisely.
Mm-hmm. And someone said, don't listen to witches.
Mm-hmm.
And who are witches? A witch
Yeah.
is somebody who doesn't have your best interests at heart.
Yeah.
You'll be able to tell from what they're saying, from what they're doing, this person
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want you to win. This person is not on your team. And
Yeah.
so we need to avoid, and to counter that, we need to spend more time around people that make us happy and doing things that make us happy.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Anything else? We have take care of your mental health, be positive. There's
mhm.
always a solution. Avoid witches and bad company. um, anything else you want to give as just words of wisdom? I know we talked about one of the things I think you shared that I would like to highlight is you don't always need to share everything, especially prematurely, because not everyone is for you.
Mhm,
Sometimes people will pretend like they like you or they're for you, and they're just trying to get information from you so they can sabotage your efforts and things like that.
mhm. Yeah, so my mom says don't talk too much because if you talk too much, people think you're a liar.
She's a wise woman.
But it's important to know what to keep private and what
Yes.
you want to have out in public, to
Mm-hmm.
split that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But overall, for me, I just, the whole point of life is to figure out what makes you happy, and success is finding that.
Yeah.
So don't let anybody else define success for you. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
listened to other people, I'd have been doing something else, I'd have studied something else, I'd have been somewhere else. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's up to you to decide for yourself what makes you happy and then to go for those goals. Things take time, and sometimes you hit bumpy roads, but if you just keep moving forward, eventually you get there.
Yeah.
I remember when I was 29, I had
Mm.
a midlife crisis. I broke down and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wanted to retire by 30. It's not gonna happen.
Look, I told someone the other day I want to retire by 50. Now 30, you were ambitious, girl. I'm like,
I was still in school. I was still in school. And I'm like, I'm not even finished school. I'm not even going to my job yet. And so we have to be kinder to ourselves. I think sometimes we're very harsh on ourselves. We're very
hmm
tough on ourselves, but you need to be
yeah,
kind to yourself. Give yourself grace, give yourself time.
yeah,
Everything happens in good time. And now when I look back, I'm just like, I'm actually happy with where I am. I'm happy
yeah,
with where I'm going.
hmm
Um, the last thing I learned, one of the key things I learned during my studies in Oxford is mindfulness.
hmm
So we need to learn to be mindful. A lot of people say they're mindful, but they're not. If you're sad, then you're living in the past.
mm,
There's something that's already happened before that is making you sad.
yeah,
If you're anxious, then you're worrying about the future, so you need to be in the present.
hmm
And when you're in the present, the mind tends to focus on negative things. So if we had this chat, for example, and let's say 10 people comment and the 9 people say, amazing, Mercy, I loved your hair, I love the conversation, such a beautiful smile, and then one person puts a negative comment, the
right,
mind tends to focus on that one negative comment, forgetting that nine other people say positive things. So
Exactly.
mindfulness is the act of being in the present and
Mm,
focusing on the positives, focusing on the good things. So
absolutely.
yes.
Well, Frida, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. We are at the top of the hour. I cannot believe we're at the top of the hour because we've just had great conversation, great insights, learned something new about you. I promise I don't stalk you on social media, but but I follow you very closely, and I'm just so happy for you to see you grow and thrive in this very innovative space that you're in and all the great work that you're doing. And I wish you all the best and more success in the future. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much, Mercy. It's really been a pleasure. It's been nice to have this conversation. And I've also got to learn a lot about you and your journey. And I see we've got so many similarities.
So
So
many.
it's made me happy. I am so honored that you could have me on your fireside chat today. And I hope the viewers have learned maybe one or two things. And I hope they can also teach us because I'll be reading the comments. Maybe, you know what, we're going to learn something
Look,
new.
I think you have some clients that may be reaching out to you for some consulting from the chat. Just putting out that. I've
Mhm.
seen some comments there, so you may have some new clients in just a few days or so. But thank you everyone for joining us for our January fireside chat. We'll see you in February. We have an exciting episode in February as well. And until then, take care of yourselves and stay warm. If you're in these United States, we have a freeze going on, and enjoy the sun if you're somewhere where the sun is shining. So thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.